What's going on, everybody? This is Daniel Harms here at the RGR Football Channel, film analyst here, and I wanted to start this video off by apologizing. I know there were some of you that asked questions about specific players in the Q&A on Monday, and I didn't have great answers for you. So I went back, I did a little bit of research, and today's video is going to be about the safety free agent market, and some of the names that popped up yesterday are going to be some of the guys we talk about in this video. So again, I apologize. But now we're going to have a little bit of context. This is the offseason talk beginning, and we get into a safety position that the Chiefs definitely could look to address in the offseason at free agent or maybe a possibility of a draft. Right now, since it's still fresh, we have seen that the Chiefs still have reason to want to bring Tyra Matthew back. He knows the defense. It appears that everything coaching-wise is going to remain intact, so that remains beneficiary for the Chiefs to try to work something out with Matthew. But there are a lot of fascinating names on this list. The Chiefs came out in their press conference. Actually, Brett Veach came out and talked about it today as they want to kind of redo everything defensively. I think the offense they feel is fine. Obviously, attacking wide receiver 2/3 is an area that they're going to do. But I think everywhere else, you're looking at relatively the same offense that it was this year is going to be back next year. And that's a good sign of continuity for the Chiefs. Defensively, there are holes, there are gaps. I have specifically mentioned that there are more ways to inject this team with youth, speed, and athleticism that will help them desperately at every single level. Basically, defensive end, defensive line to an extent, still a linebacker, and then the safety and corner group, it needs an injection. So we're going to talk a little bit about the safety free agent group today because there are a lot of really, really young, good players in this group of free agents. And the safety class and the safety free agent market is typically one that plays out a little bit slower than everything else that we've seen. There seems to always be a guy out there that could just wait and just be someone you can add and is an impactful player. Take Trey Boston, for example, a few years ago. He was a guy that always had these one-year contracts, and then he played really well when he got that contract, and he still ended up waiting and having to wait until the end of almost all the way to next season before he got another opportunity. So there's always going to be names out there, but let's start at the top. Somebody who I also didn't have an answer for yesterday. Again, I do apologize. Marcus Williams, safety for the Saints. This is definitely a young player. He's, let me see right here. He's 25. He'll still be 25 before the beginning of next year, according to what I have in front of me. A 6'1", 195 guy who has not a ton of speed, so we're looking probably more as he does have a free safety build to him in terms of what he did in New Orleans, and that's what they're looking at here. If you were talking about shifting things a little bit, we did see a little bit of a glimpse of Juan Thornhill playing that Tyra Matthew role a little bit in this season. If the Chiefs want to commit to that, and maybe since he doesn't necessarily have the speed that he used to, we don't know if that's going to ever come back or if it's just kind of a temporary thing. Or if, he's just not always going 100% with his knee back yet. So yeah, we still got some figuring out there. But if they want to bring him down to that strong safety role, I think that they have the ability to do that. And there's some players like Marcus Williams who are free safeties in the defense that they played in. Again, young, athletic players. And I know that one of the biggest things that Marcus Williams is known for is that Minneapolis Miracle, the Minnesota Miracle, whatever you want to say it was, where he missed the tackle on Stephon Diggs, really kind of went for the ball instead of looking to wrap him up, allowed him to get the touchdown. But he's been one of the best safeties in the NFL since. Graded out as one of the best overall safeties this season, according to PFF. And I know that it's not, live or die based off PFF stuff, but I do think that it's relatively important to see that over the course of the last 3 years, playing nearly 1,000 snaps in every single one, he has a 78 and above grade in every single season, coming off an 80 grade from PFF this past year as their 7th ranked safety. He was 4th in 2019, so I think that you still have quite a bit of player there, a young player who can come in. He's going to be a bit more expensive. He's probably going to be what Matthew was making now, maybe a little bit more. He's not going to be a $20 million safety like Matthew may seem to want to be right now. That we've kind of heard rumors about him wanting to be a top, paid safety. So Marcus Williams is going to be a guy who I think you can build around with that safety. You get him and Thornhill in the same room, maybe bring Armani Watts back because he is also a free agent. Look to add maybe through the draft as well. Get a young, athletic group at safety. I think that's a very, very good place to start. Again, he would be a little more expensive, but definitely an option in this deep safety free agent pool. Another player we're going to talk about is from the team that just beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, Jessie Bates, 25 years old. Again, not going to be 26 until into the season next year. That's what you're looking for, young athletic players. And I think that he's an interesting prospect because he's had really 2 years where he wasn't great in 2019, 2021 overall. But I think you saw specifically in the postseason, Jessie Bates hit a different level. He was a much better player than he was throughout the regular season, and still at 25, coming off in 2020, he was one of the best safeties in the NFL. He was like the PFF's number 3 ranked safety in the entire NFL. When he showed like he played it too. So that's really, really important. Game speed, again, recognizing game speed, all of that kind of stuff is very, very important. And I think that when you add some of these free safety or regular safety or for strong safety kind of players, you can really change up what you do. And that's what we're looking what Spags wants to do. He wants to be able to play multiple guys at safety and multiple guys at high, multiple guys at strong safety, to be able to rotate these guys around, and having athletic younger players and Marcus Williams and Jessie Bates and Juan Thornhill, maybe add Armani Watts to the mix and a young safety. These are the kind of things that you can do with a young, athletic, faster group, specifically a very, very mentally strong group. I think Jessie Bates is one of the smartest safeties in this free agent class. And that's also very, very important. We've seen that Matthew has to be the guy that gets everybody lined up on the defensive side, and his presence was routinely missed in the Bills game. And I think that he did an excellent job getting everybody set up in that Bengals game. Very, very important mentally speaking. Contract analysis, looking more around a 12 to 13-ish $1 million contract for Jessie Bates. That's relatively doable for a guy who's going to be at the cornerstone of your safety group with with Thornhill. So I think that that's definitely some place you can look. I tend to think that Jessie Bates is going to return to the Bengals, especially after getting to the Super Bowl this year. But again, he was turned down for an extension last year for Sam Hubbard. So we're going to see how that works out with Cincinnati if he gets overlooked for maybe somebody else and look to draft in somebody else to replace him. An interesting prospect, again, taking that mold of a player that can bring Juan Thornhill down to play what Tyra Matthew did. Quandre Diggs, complete free safety out of Seattle the last couple of years. He's 29 years old, so a little bit older. What you're looking for in some of those veteran guys who don't have, a ton of the speed they used to have, but as a pure free safety, reads everything very well. He's a turnover machine. He intercepts 21.6% of the passes thrown in his direction since 2019. That's the best in the NFL over that period of time. So he's one of those ball hawk kind of guys. I think you could do worse than bringing in somebody who's going to be, a little bit older, but over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen quite a few safeties play well into their 30s at a very high level. I think Matthew is one of those guys who can do that, and I think that Quandre Diggs is another one that can do that as well, especially considering how often he intercepts the ball. That tells me he's a smart player who understands where the ball's going, reads the field very well, can anticipate what a quarterback is going to do, and that's going to pay everything off. I know that, as a traditionally almost 100% free safety guy, he's not going to always come in the box. But I think a guy with his instincts and his intelligence, the Spags can work with that specifically and get something out of him in that sense. So contract, talking about, he's looking more about an $8 million average per year, which is very, very doable for this market. It's very doable for this team. Specifically, he's going to be more of a bargain contract for the Chiefs. I think that he's a guy who can come in and maybe help some of that turnover regression that kind of level its way out in the middle of the season towards the end. But at the end of the day, in the postseason, the team wasn't generating a ton of turnovers. And Diggs is a guy who probably might be able to do that as well. So I wouldn't have an issue with bringing him in as an elder statesman, a veteran, and maybe drafting some other guys to bring in as well. Again, that 8-year possible projected salary is much more doable and much more swallowable than it is everything else. So it's really, really nice to see a guy with that much mental side and that much turnover progression be a little bit cheaper in the safety market. We're going to get back to some of the younger guys here. Jordan Whitehead, who was a safety with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, obviously we all remember that. He played very well, very well for them in 2020. Nearly 1,000 snaps both the last 2 years. More of a safety rotation back there that he played through the Super Bowl with the torn labrum. So that's tells you that the kind of player that he is. Graded out as one of the top 17 safeties in the NFL. So he's not like a great option by any means. He's going to be more of a rotational player. Like Spags wants to have 3 safeties rotating in. The biggest thing for me is that he's 25. He's going to be 25 when the season starts. Again, more attractive in terms of young players. A little bit bigger frame, 5'10", 198. So you're looking at a guy who can probably play a little bit more on the inside in that safety, the strong safety role. And that's exactly what we're looking at. He's definitely built that way. He's going to come down and lay some hits. And I think that that's something that Spags likes as well, as a safety who could maybe come in a little bit bigger than a Tyra Matthew and really lay some lumber as that strong safety. Something that, Dan Sorensen used to be able to do and tried to do to an extent and got his career extended that way, in my opinion. So, and his salary is looking at more of a $6 million average. Again, things that are much easier to take on if you can find a rotational player in there to make your three safety set work. I think Jordan Whitehead would be definitely not the most ideal option, but if we're talking about getting him in Kansas City for like 3 or 4 years on like a $6 million average salary, I think that's very doable, especially for a rotational player. Another man that was mentioned yesterday that I think I mistook the read that was with the Panthers a few years ago and the 49ers before that. Now this Justin Reed in Houston the last couple of years has been a much better player than his PFF grades really label out. He's in a bad team, so when you're in a bad team, your talent level can only do so much, especially if you're having to recover for everything else. We've seen that Matthew's impact when he's trying to recover for everybody else can come down, and I think Justin Reed has had to do that over the last 2 years in Houston. Their defense was much better in 2019, and he graded out as one of the top safeties in the class in the league that year. Definitely more of a bigger body guy, 6'1", 203, and has a 4.4 speed when he was coming out of Stanford. Definitely more of a guy that I think would be someone you can bring in as a young guy. Again, will be 25 at the beginning of next year. Going to be a little bit more expensive, more on the Quandre Diggs level, about $8, $9, maybe $10 million a year. Still young, has all that ranginess that you can really looking for, and he doesn't allow a ton of incompletions. He doesn't allow a ton of completions. Allows one of those guys that can really jack up that the forced incompletion rate, get his hands on some balls. Maybe not always the most turnover worthy kind of guy, but he's definitely going to force more PBUs and maybe make a quarterback throw away from him. So definitely more of an athletic kind of guy, and it's someone who I think that Spags would be able to get as a free safety who can play strong and kind of move around and things like that. There was a little bit of an issue with some character problems in Houston. He was a healthy scratch, I think, in week 12 for disciplinary reasons. But for me, that this kind of player in Kansas City, this is where you come in to have that kind of thing. So I think that it would help him grow as a player. Still very young, obviously very moldable, an option that I think would be definitely fitting for what the Chiefs are looking for. The last guy we're going to talk about is Jabril Peppers, who, coming off an injury this past year with the Giants, he's coming off of his very first contract. He's going to be 27, closer to 27 at the start of next year. But this is a player who I think can do everything that Dan Sorensen used to do and better. He's a guy who you can have as a punt returner, a very electric player, has a ton of athleticism and instincts downhill, and he's going to lay the lumber too. 5'11", 213, more of a linebacker hybrid safety kind of player, and somebody that I think that would really fit well, who can play all of those. He can play free safety if he has to. He can play robber if you want him to. You can play down in the box if you have to, because he's got that big body. Definitely a guy who's going to be less expensive coming off an injury. Probably more of a one-year prove-it deal for Jabril Peppers, looking towards trying to get paid one more time. So if you're trying to draft somebody young and kind of reset at safety, I think that Jabril Peppers is an option for this team, and maybe you end up signing him longer term because he does fit what Dan Sorensen wants to do, especially if you're going to keep Spags around. So there's obviously more safeties out there, but I just wanted to talk about like the top 5 or 6 guys who I think could really come back in. Obviously, Tyra Matthew is always going to be part of that conversation. They're going to work to bring him back, but these other free agent guys are going to probably be less expensive outside of Marcus Williams. He's going to be up there with Matthew. And if there's anybody else you guys want to talk about, definitely put it down in the comment section. There's going to be a ton of different safeties in there. We'll get into some film for them before the free agency starts, and we'll definitely get through some more of these free agent classes in terms of different positions, and we'll talk it out. And again, if you guys have any other players that you want mentioned or stats that you want to look at for these safeties and how maybe they would fit and things like that, go ahead and put that in the comment section. We're going to have a ton of conversation this offseason about players specifically on the defensive side and more in the free agent class. So if you guys enjoyed it, please hit that thumbs up. The like button definitely helps get all these out there to new Chiefs fans. Sub, so you guys get everything we do here, helps bring our numbers up. And then that bell notification, that just literally tells you whenever a new video drops or a live video is about to pop up. So again, appreciate you guys' support. I know this is a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I felt the need to get all these guys out there in the open for you on the safety market. Very, very important going forward, especially if Tyra Matthew can't be in Kansas City next year. Everybody, please have a great day. And this is RGR Football Channel.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.